Hollywood loves to portray Roman legionnaires waking up cheerfully in the sunshine. They emerge from their tents in gleaming armor, ready to conquer the world, fresh and full of energy. In reality, the morning in a Roman camp began long before dawn and resembled a form of sophisticated torture. You didn't wake up to the sound of birds singing, but to a cold that penetrated to the bone. Herein lies the main mystery of the Roman military machine. How could an army that slept on the frozen ground and was constantly in a state of physical exhaustion conquer half the world? The answer lies in the structure of their morning nightmare.
Another day, another mile.
Comfort makes soldiers weak, while constant discomfort turns them into deadly machines. Modern sports doctors would call their morning routine a mockery of the human body, but the Romans intuitively understood the laws of adaptation that science only discovered a couple of decades ago. Let's examine exactly what a legionary felt when he opened his eyes in his cramped tent, and why this experience was the key to their absolute invincibility on the battlefield. Imagine spending the night in the woods in late autumn without a sleeping bag or thermal underwear. A Roman tent made of goat skin provided excellent protection from the rain, but did absolutely nothing to retain heat. 8 adult men slept in a cramped space on thin cloaks right on top of the damp ground. Modern tourists complain about hard foam pads, but legionnaires were happy if there wasn't a rock under their backs. A night in such a tent was a true test of endurance for anyone. The leather fabric absorbed moisture from the air, and by morning became heavy and unpleasantly slippery. Condensation from the breath of 8 people gathered on the ceiling and slowly dripped right onto the faces of the sleepers. It was that very sticky, bone-chilling cold from which it is impossible to hide under a cloak. You open your eyes and your body instantly reminds you of yesterday's grueling day. Yesterday you marched 30 kilometers with a backpack that weighed as much as half your wife. Modern doctors would call your condition severe physical exhaustion. Roman centurions called it a light morning warm-up before the real work. Why didn't they let the soldiers get a good night's sleep after a grueling march? The answer is simple. Comfort makes an army weak and complacent at a critical moment. Constant, mild discomfort maintained the baseline level of aggression necessary for survival in the wild. The anger in the morning transformed into incredible energy on the battlefield. While Gallic warriors basked in warm homes, the Romans grew accustomed to hating the world around them. Modern coaches call this creating artificial stress to boost performance. But let's go back to the tent, where you're trying to move your frozen limbs. Every muscle explodes with a dull pain, and your shoulders are rubbed raw by straps until they're covered in bloody blisters. There's no hot coffee in bed in sight, not even for the officers. You pull on a cold woolen tunic that has stiffened overnight from the damp. It smells of old sweat, campfire smoke, and wet sheepskin. Your day has begun, and it will be exactly the same as yesterday's hell. But here's what's truly surprising about this whole situation. Despite the excruciating pain in your muscles, your body has already adapted to this insane regimen. The commanders knew that by the 15th day of marching, soldiers stopped feeling fatigue so acutely. The nervous system simply shuts off panic and switches to a hardcore survival mode. Science today confirms this phenomenon of pain receptor shutdown. Under prolonged monotonous stress, the body lowers its pain threshold and reorganizes its metabolism. Your body literally understands that there is no turning back and begins to conserve resources. The Romans didn't know biology, but they knew exactly how to make people work. You crawl out of the tent into the morning fog, shivering from the biting wind. The ground beneath your feet has turned to sticky mud after the night's drizzle. The air is so cold that every breath burns your lungs. Welcome to another glorious day of service for the glory of the empire. Your legs ache as if you've just run a marathon, but you have to get up. Lying on the icy ground is even more painful than simply standing and moving. The camp is beginning to wake up, and you have only a few minutes to pull yourself together. New tests of endurance await you ahead. You try to straighten your back, and your spine makes a sound like a dry twig snapping. Yesterday's 30-kilometer march with a full pack has left its mark on every cell. A modern orthopedist would be horrified to see how the joints deform under such a weight. But in the Roman army, your back didn't belong to you. It belonged to the state. Every soldier carried up to 40 kilograms of equipment on his back every day. This included weapons, armor, construction tools, 2 stakes for a palisade, and a heavy ration. Try carrying 2 large bags of cement and walking through the woods with them all day. Your lower back will start begging for mercy after just an hour of such a walk. But here it gets more interesting and paradoxical. Why didn't the Romans use more carts to transport their army supplies? Because carts depend on roads, and roads are far from everywhere. An army that carries everything on its own can traverse any impassable swamps. Gaius Marius reformed the army exactly this way, forcing soldiers to carry absolutely everything. They were even nicknamed Marius's mules, and this nickname was by no means a compliment. The soldiers hated the weight, but it made the legion incredibly mobile and deadly. You woke up with excruciating pain, but the enemy could never catch you off guard. Your calves are so stiff they feel like they're made of a single piece of wood. The soles of your feet are covered with a thick layer of calluses that have become harder than the rubber of modern sneakers. If you step on a sharp rock with your bare foot, you'd hardly feel it. It's the body's natural armor, developed through months of continuous walking. But here's what's truly amazing about this training system. Most soldiers didn't suffer serious back injuries, despite the monstrous strain. Why? Because their bodies went through the most brutal adaptation process in human history. Modern sports doctors call this progressive skeletal overload. If you gradually increase the weight, your bones become denser and your tendons much thicker. Recruits started with light weights, gradually working their way up to absurd levels. By the time combat began, their skeletons had literally changed their structure. My knees start to ache just thinking about this schedule. The Romans didn't know biomechanics, but they understood the basic principle of survival. If you force a person to do the impossible every day, eventually it becomes their norm. And this brutal norm helped them conquer half the known world. You rub your frozen joints with a rough cloth, trying to get the blood flowing. No warming ointments or massages, just rough friction and willpower. The pain doesn't go away. It simply becomes a constant backdrop to your life. You learn to ignore it just as you ignore an annoying fly. You can't stay on the ground because the camp already needs you. The sound of a bugle cuts through the frosty air, and a new phase of torment begins. You must be ready for action faster than you can realize how exhausted you are. The day won't wait for you to recover. The awakening of the Legion is a sound that is absolutely impossible to forget. Imagine a city of 40,000 people suddenly coming to life. It's not a quiet stir, but a sharp industrial clang of metal and wood. Modern people complain about the noise of a lawnmower, but a Roman camp sounded like a heavy factory. First, you hear a series of dull thuds. The legionaries are simultaneously pulling the pegs out of their tents. Then comes the clang of metal as the soldiers inspect their weapons and heavy armor. This clanging merges into a single rumble that echoes through the surrounding forests. For the local tribes, this sound was a harbinger of inevitable death and destruction. Why didn't the Romans try to assemble quietly so as not to attract attention? Because stealth made no sense for such a massive machine. The camp was a fortress, and its noise served as an excellent psychological attack on the enemies. The barbarians heard this metallic symphony and realized that a perfect machine was advancing against them. Added to the sounds of metal is the loud bellowing of thousands of animals. Mules, horses, and oxen begin to bellow in discontent, demanding their morning food and water. This entire massive base must be fed before the army can move. It sounds like an insurmountable logistical nightmare, doesn't it? But this is where the true magic of Roman military organization begins. There was no disorder in this chaos. Every unit knew its time and place. Trumpets of different tones sounded, and the legionaries understood these signals better than we understand our alarm clocks. One signal meant to pack up the tents, the second to load the gear, the third to fall into formation. Today we use computers to manage crowds in stadiums. The Romans managed tens of thousands of men with just a few brass trumpets. If anyone broke the rhythm, the system punished them instantly and with extreme severity. Discipline was maintained not by persuasion, but by the centurion's rod. You hear the commander's abrupt, coarse curses in Latin. They urge on those who are tying the straps on their sandals too slowly. There was no room for individuality in the Roman army. You were merely a cog in the machine, and that cog had to work flawlessly or the entire legion would break down. Gradually, the chaotic noise begins to transform into an organized marching rhythm. The murmur of voices subsides, giving way to the measured clatter of iron-shod feet. The ground literally begins to tremble under the synchronized pressure of this massive force. This sound caused the barbarians to panic even before the battle began. Modern scientists say that low-frequency noise triggers subconscious panic in the listener. The Romans used this intuitively, creating a sound pressure wave. You march in formation, and this sound fills you with a false sense of absolute invincibility. You forget the pain, becoming part of a deadly whole. But before the march, you must endure one more trial of the morning routine. You stand in formation in the morning mist, and your senses sharpen. You begin to notice the smell that is the hallmark of any Roman legion. It is a smell that cannot be washed away or forgotten. If you were transported to a camp, your modern nose would simply stop working. We're used to pleasant chemical deodorants, daily hot showers, and always fresh linens. Our modern environment is practically sterile and devoid of natural body odors. The ancient world would have struck our unprepared senses with incredible and brutal force. A Roman legion smelled as if a huge herd of dirty animals had run through a vinegar factory. It was an incredibly dense, thick, and suffocating aroma of pure, hard, masculine labor. Let's start with the most obvious and frightening fact for modern people. 40,000 rugged men could go without washing for several long weeks in a row. Under the conditions of an active military campaign, proper baths were an absolutely unattainable and unthinkable luxury. Water was conserved and saved exclusively for drinking or preparing meager field rations. Washing in cold rivers was extremely rare and did not wash away the grime that had caked on over many days. Therefore, natural body odor became a constant companion of every soldier of the great empire. The legionnaires sweated profusely during grueling marches under the scorching sun while fully armed. They sweated profusely during the daily evening construction of a massive defensive moat and rampart. At night, in cramped, enclosed tents, this process did not stop at all. Their coarse woolen tunics constantly absorbed this salty sweat like giant sponges. Field clothing was practically never truly washed due to a simple lack of time. Wool retains precious warmth excellently, but it also preserves all unpleasant odors perfectly. In addition, the soldiers liberally wiped their open wounds and battle scratches with pure vinegar. They used it for the daily thorough cleaning of their metal armor and weapons. The acid effectively corroded emerging rust and restored a menacing shine to the equipment. The camp was literally saturated with these caustic fumes, which irritated the eyes and the back of the throat. On calm, windless days, an invisible, dense cloud of acid hung over the tents. Breathing such air when unaccustomed to it was physically painful and extremely unpleasant. Why did they use so much of this strange vinegar? The answer lies in the incredible pragmatism of the Roman military machine and the bitter experience of past wars. The Romans had long understood one very simple but extremely important strategic fact. Far more soldiers always die from invisible diseases and severe infections than from enemy swords. Therefore, the command desperately sought any effective ways to protect people from mass epidemics. Cheap, sour wine became the ideal solution to this complex logistical problem. Vinegar was their most reliable all-purpose antiseptic in the field. It served as the only available safeguard against invisible bacteria, which they didn't even suspect existed at the time. The acidic environment did indeed kill many dangerous microorganisms in dirty drinking water. Modern evidence-based medicine fully confirms that acetic acid effectively cleans and disinfects. To us, it sounds like a strange dressing for a vegetable salad in a restaurant. But in antiquity, this simple liquid actually saved tens of thousands of human lives. The ubiquitous sharp smell of vinegar was mixed with the rich aroma of old leather and animal fat. A huge number of items in Roman military equipment were made precisely from natural materials. Armor, numerous belts, heavy campaign tents, and shield covers required constant care. All these essential items had to be regularly and generously treated with special compounds. Otherwise, the expensive material would quickly deteriorate and lose its protective properties. If natural leather is not regularly treated with fat, it will quickly rot from dampness. In the rainy European autumn, unlubricated equipment could fall apart in literally just 1 month. Therefore, every evening, the soldiers diligently rubbed lard or cheap olive oil into their gear. This process was as important a duty as sharpening one's beloved sword before a bloody battle. Shiny, greasy leather signaled high discipline and good preparation within a combat unit. However, the grease used to heavily coat the equipment often went rancid under the scorching midday sun. Organic materials began to deteriorate rapidly under the constant exposure to high temperatures on the march. Imagine the nauseating smell of spoiled old lard left out in the summer heat for too long. Add to that a unique aroma reminiscent of a wet, dirty yard dog. That's how a real elite Roman soldier smelled right before the most serious battle. My nose starts to itch treacherously just from this detailed description alone. But here's what's truly striking about the workings of human physiology and our brains. After a couple of days of active life in the camp, you simply stop noticing this symphony of stench. Your nervous system quickly adapts to the aggressive environment and stops sending out alarm signals. The brain forcibly shuts down the olfactory receptors so as not to overload the psyche any further. All this incredible stench blends into a single familiar and completely indistinguishable background noise. In modern science, this useful phenomenon is called olfactory adaptation. It was precisely this innate protective reaction of the body that literally saved the sanity of Roman legionnaires. Without it, the soldiers would simply have gone mad from constant nausea and throbbing headaches. Nature has wisely ensured that humans can survive under absolutely any conditions. That is why, after a week on the march, a legionnaire could calmly eat his rations while sitting next to a dung heap. To the soldier himself, this wild smell was not at all repulsive or off-putting. On the contrary, over time, it became the scent of his own people and the safety of home. It was a soothing aroma of absolute protection and the incredible collective power of the invincible legion. When night horse patrols returned wearily from the dense, hostile forest, they relied on their sense of smell. They could sense their own camp several kilometers before the first watchfires came into view. By this distinctive scent, one could unerringly determine exactly who stood before you in the darkness. Barbarians often used pungent animal oil to care for their long hair. The Gauls and Germans considered such heavily oiled hairstyles a sign of ferocity and high warrior status. The Romans sincerely despised this foreign smell, regarding it as clear evidence of barbaric savagery. Ironically, considering that the disciplined legionnaires themselves smelled like a walking factory of vinegar and sweat. But in the conditions of brutal war, each opposing army considered the enemy's stench to be the most unbearable. This helped to psychologically dehumanize the enemy and kill him without hesitation in battle. Early in the morning, you step out of the stuffy tent into the cool air of the waking camp. You breathe in this thick air deeply, and it stings your throat slightly with its familiar acidity. The vast camp has finally awakened, and thousands of smells instantly blend into a familiar, dense bouquet. Your tired brain receives a reassuring signal that you are among your loyal comrades. There is no sudden mortal danger right now, and you can relax for a second. It's time to go back to the tent and prepare the traditional morning breakfast for your squad. You return to your contubernium, the most basic structural unit of the vast Roman army. This small unit of 8 men was the solid foundation of the entire invincible military machine. These 7 tough guys around you are your only real family far from home. They are also your constant partners in hard work and your biggest daily headache. You share a single tiny tent with them, measuring about 3 by 3 meters. Modern strict sanitary standards would categorically prohibit keeping even livestock in there. Inside this leather sack, living space was compressed to the absolute physical minimum. 8 adult men with heavy personal weapons and armor were crammed into 9 square meters. Personal space did not exist in any form whatsoever, not even for junior officers. You literally slept on top of one another, constantly jostling with sharp elbows in pitch darkness. A single awkward, sudden movement in your sleep would inevitably wake at least 2 of your exhausted neighbors. It resembled a tightly packed wooden barrel of herring, only this herring was swearing loudly in Latin. If your comrades snored loudly and boisterously, you couldn't go sleep in another vacant room. You had to endure that dreadful, irritating sound right above your ear all night long. If anyone among the 8 caught a cold or contracted a dangerous infection, absolutely everyone suffered without exception. You were constantly breathing in the same dangerous bacteria in a closed, stuffy space. The risk of mass infection within a single barracks was always close to 100%. It was physically impossible to hide from others' health problems in such a cramped collective. It seems illogical to create such terrible cramped conditions for your soldiers, doesn't it? Why deliberately torment people on whose high combat readiness the fate of an entire vast empire depends? Why not make the tents a little larger to provide minimal comfort for warriors exhausted after a march? After all, an extra couple of square meters could have drastically improved the quality of the army's night's sleep. These reasonable questions are often asked by modern people accustomed to personal, inviolable comfort. But the pragmatic Roman command had its own harsh view of daily life. The answer lies in the ruthless mathematics of supplying a massive advancing Roman army. Any tent, even a slightly larger one, inevitably requires much more expensive, heavy leather. To set it up securely, more long wooden stakes and sturdy rope are needed. Consequently, this entire cumbersome structure weighs significantly more when dry, and especially when wet. This means that regularly moving the camp would require thousands more mules, which would need to be constantly fed. Roman logistics always prioritized strategic mobility over the comfort of its men. But this unbearable crampedness had another incredibly powerful and important psychological effect. Forced to live so close to one another, you inevitably become a single, cohesive, living organism. The soldiers thoroughly studied the complex personalities, strengths, and weaknesses of every member of their 8-man unit. You know exactly what your comrades' secret fears are and how they react to sudden danger. This deep understanding of human nature was forged through endless nighttime conversations in the dark. In a life or death struggle, this intuitive understanding decided the outcome of a bloody battle in a fraction of a second. Today, large corporations spend millions on trendy team-building workshops. Hired managers come up with ridiculous artificial games to boost trust among employees. The Romans simply locked 8 armed men in a damp, cramped tent for 6 months or longer. If you don't quickly learn to get along peacefully, you'll simply kill each other in everyday conflicts. This method left people no choice but to become a single unit. It was a harsh but incredibly effective form of natural selection for ideal teamwork. Within each of these tiny male groups, a clear and understandable hierarchy inevitably emerged. Every tent had its own recognized leader and a strictly defined division of daily chores. The senior soldier in the tent was appointed the dean, and his word was the unquestionable law for the rest. Someone was personally responsible for setting up the tent correctly, while another constantly prepared food for everyone. Someone else closely monitored the health of the shared government-issued mule and regularly repaired torn equipment. Not a single important daily task was left without a responsible person to carry it out, even on the hardest days. In such a close-knit group, you simply couldn't afford to be lazy or shirk your direct responsibilities. Your personal irresponsibility instantly and painfully affected your closest army friends. If you didn't secure the tent stakes properly in the ground, the heavy tent would collapse on the heads of your sleeping comrades in the middle of the night. If you accidentally burned the porridge, your entire 8-man squad would go hungry before a long, grueling march. That's why harsh public censure inside the tent was often worse than an official punishment from the commander. Letting your brothers in arms down was considered the most shameful offense in a legionnaire's life. Every early morning in the waking barracks resembled complex circus acrobatics. This daily routine was like a frantic game of tag for survival in a confined space. You had to get dressed quickly, put on heavy armor, and avoid hitting your neighbor in the face with your elbow. At the same time, your comrade might be tying the straps of his leather sandals. Every morning, movement was honed through long, grueling months of practice until it became a reflexive automatism. Every soldier knew exactly his correct path of movement within this cramped leather box. You operated as a single, incredibly well-coordinated, multi-armed mechanism, completely without a word. Arguments over who would be the first to step outside in the morning ended within the first month of service. If anyone from your well-coordinated group of 8 tragically died in yet another bloody battle, the well-oiled system would collapse. His place was inevitably taken by a green, inexperienced, and deathly frightened recruit from the rear reserve. This newcomer was constantly getting in the way, didn't know the unspoken rules, and disrupted the perfect internal harmony. That is why experienced legionnaires defended their tent mates more fiercely than their own lives. The loss of a battle-tested comrade meant the painful disruption of camp life, which had been fine-tuned down to the smallest detail. No one wanted to spend a long time teaching a new recruit how to properly cook field rations or care for a stubborn mule all over again. Team loyalty was the strongest internal motivator not to retreat under the onslaught of the superior enemy forces. They shouted loudly that they were fighting selflessly for the greatness of the empire, but in reality they were dying for the guys in the tent. By this day, practically nothing substantial or material remained of your cozy home. On the frozen ground, only trampled cold grass and a couple of forgotten wooden splinters from the stakes were visible. Your entire harsh army life is once again packed tightly and ready to be moved to new, unexplored territories. Now you need to eat as quickly and heartily as possible before the next loud blast from the metal pipe sounds. There's no time to linger because the strict army schedule never tolerates any personal delays or excuses. Breakfast time in the Legion is strictly limited. A Roman breakfast would shatter modern notions of what tough warriors ate. You won't find steaks, fried bacon, or scrambled eggs here. A legionnaire's diet consisted of 80% grains. Meat was considered second-rate food, eaten only out of sheer desperation. Why did the greatest warriors of antiquity follow a strict carbohydrate diet? Commanders quickly realized that soldiers on a meat-based diet grew tired on the march. Meat takes a long time to digest, sapping the energy needed for muscle function. Wheat, on the other hand, provides slow, steady energy for the entire long day. Modern marathon runners load up on carbs, calling it the trendy carb loading. The Romans practiced this every day as they marched their grueling 20 miles. Breakfast consisted of porridge or hard flatbreads called bucellatum. It was a dry ration that was easy to nibble on the go. But there is one brutal logistical detail of the Roman military system. The empire did not issue soldiers ready-made soft bread or pure flour. Each soldier received unmilled grain, about 1.5 kilograms, and every morning you had to grind it with your tired hands. In the contubernia, there was a hand mill that weighed about 30 kilograms. Turning that stone slab after a march was pure torture for the body. Congratulations, you've just completed another workout without even realizing it. This greatly strengthened the shoulder girdle and made the arms strong. You chew this hard flatbread, and it painfully scratches your throat. There's almost no taste, just a hint of smoke and stone dust from the millstones. This dust gradually wore the legionnaire's teeth down to the very root. But there was no choice. It was your only fuel for survival. They washed it all down with pasca, that very water with a sharp vinegar tang. The sour taste invigorated better than caffeine and instantly quenched intense thirst. It was an ancient energy drink without sugar or artificial colors. It saved the soldiers from dehydration under the scorching midday sun. The left legionnaires had no cooks in the modern sense. The 8 of us cooked for ourselves over a small smoky fire. If you didn't grind the grain well enough, the whole tent would choke on grating porridge. It was a system of collective responsibility for the quality of your food. They ate quickly, standing or squatting, without any social small talk. Eating was not a pleasure, but a technical process of refueling the body. Your stomach is stuffed with heavy wheat, and warmth spreads through your frozen body. You are ready for the strain that would break an ordinary person. The leftover dry flatbreads are tucked into leather pouches on your army belt. They'll come in handy later in the day when your blood sugar starts plummeting. Now comes the time for the most hated and coldest morning ritual. It's time to put on your iron armor. Putting on iron armor on a frosty morning is a special kind of torture. The Lorica Hamada, Roman chainmail, had cooled to ambient temperature overnight. When you threw on those kilograms of metal, a real electric shock pierced your body. The cold penetrated through the woolen tunic in a matter of agonizing seconds. Modern soldiers wear lightweight body armor that retains body heat. The Romans had no such technology. Their protection was pure, icy iron. The chainmail consisted of thousands of tiny rings that sought to pinch the skin. It was incredibly heavy, cold, and as uncomfortable as possible. Next came the helmet, made of thick iron or bronze. It fit tightly on the head, covering the ears to protect against blows. The inside of the helmet was lined with leather, but the metal still made the forehead feel freezing. Germanic helmets looked cooler, but Roman ones allowed you to survive an axe blow. The most challenging piece of equipment was the caligae, the famous sandals. They were studded with dozens of iron nails on a sturdy sole. These nails provided traction, much like soccer cleats. Without them, soldiers would have simply slipped helplessly through the bloody mud. Tying the caligae with frozen fingers was a test of fine motor skills. The leather straps became stiff from the dampness and resisted all effort. You pulled them with all your might, breaking your nails and cursing through clenched teeth. And you had to tighten them perfectly tight and even. Why did the officers pay such obsessive attention to lacing? Poorly tied shoes mean blisters, and blisters mean you can't walk. A soldier who can't march becomes a heavy burden on the legion. A centurion could easily beat you for carelessly tied sandals. Your office job requires a degree, but you sit in a comfortable chair. These guys strapped on iron to walk 30 kilometers. Every detail of their equipment was designed with a single goal in mind: efficiency. Comfort didn't even factor into the ancient engineer's specifications. The armor fits tightly against the body, severely restricting chest movement. You can't take a deep breath. You have to breathe shallowly. It took weeks of training camp to get used to this too. A Roman soldier's breathing worked in a completely different, extreme mode. As you pick up the heavy wooden shield, you feel the strain in your left arm. This scutum was not merely a shield, but the primary weapon in close formation. You would brace your shoulder against it and push the enemy, creating space for your sword. It weighed about 10 kilograms and you carried it all day. Now you are fully equipped and ready for any orders. You are no longer just a farmer, you are an armored combat unit. The metal gradually warms from your body heat, becoming a second skin. You are ready to kill enemies and try not to die yourself. Physical pain was only half the problem for the average Roman soldier. The psychological pressure and the sense of impending danger were far more exhausting. You are thousands of kilometers from home, in a dark and damp forest, and every rustle in the morning could mean a heavy spear flying toward you. Local barbarian tribes rarely engaged in fair open combat. They would watch the camp for hours, waiting for the slightest mistake by the exhausted sentries. This invisible threat drove many inexperienced recruits mad. You could never completely relax, especially while sleeping. How did the Romans combat this widespread destructive paranoia? They simply turned iron discipline into their new religion. If a sentry fell asleep, the punishment was death at the hands of his own comrades. It was cruel, but it guaranteed the safety of the entire vast legion. Modern psychologists call this state hypervigilance. The soldiers developed a conditioned reflex, constant readiness for violence. They didn't think at all about politics or the empire's lofty ideals. They thought only about how to survive until the next cold night. The barbarians tried to break the legionnaires by letting out terrifying screams at night. They banged their weapons against their shields and lit bonfires around your camp. Celtic warriors might stand naked, demonstrating their contempt for any kind of death. But the Roman machine was designed not to give in to emotions. Your task was not to be a brave hero. Heroism in the Roman army was punished if it disrupted the overall order. You had to be a reliable cog, stepping forward on command. Ignore the screams, ignore the fear, and methodically stab with your short sword. Here, the genius of the brutal training process becomes clear. Exhausting marches drained the soldiers so thoroughly that they had no strength left to panic. When you're dead tired, you no longer care who's screaming in the darkness. Paradoxically, fatigue became the best sedative. My nerves would have given out on the second day of such an unbearable life. But the legionnaires served 25 years on combat alert. Those who lived to see retirement received a plot of land and veteran status. But their psyches remained forever scarred by endless war. You look at the faces of your comrades. They are stern, empty, and focused. No smiles or unnecessary emotions, only cold, professional calculation. Commanders valued this emotional dullness more than the fury of berserkers. Fury burns out quickly, but cold malice works long hours. The centurion walks along the ranks, tapping the shields with his staff. His calm gaze acts on the legionaries like a powerful spell. As long as he gives clear commands, the world seems understandable and completely safe. You simply do what you're told and hope to survive. Life under such conditions guaranteed constant minor, painful injuries. Chafed feet, cuts from equipment, splinters from thick wooden stakes. In a modern army, you'd be sent to the medical station for a band-aid. In Rome, your morning blisters were strictly your own problem. Qualified Roman medics did exist, but they dealt with serious injuries. Pulling out an arrow, stitching up a cut, or amputating a shattered limb, that was their specialty. Going to them with a blister was the height of foolishness and a cause for ridicule. Legionnaires treated minor injuries themselves, gritting their teeth. The main home remedy remained the same old universal vinegar. Got a deep blister on your heel from stiff leather straps? Rinse it with vinegar and endure the burning pain until your vision goes dark. Rubbed your shoulders raw? Again, vinegar and a piece of dirty wool on top. It sounds like sadism, but the alternative was gangrene and a painful death. Modern research shows that Roman medicine was remarkably effective. Through experimentation, they developed ideal protocols for field sterilization. Vinegar, honey, and wine were their main tools against infections. Thick honey was actively used to heal large open wounds. It creates an airtight film and draws out moisture, killing any bacteria. It sounds strange, but it worked perfectly in the unsanitary conditions of the legion. Doctors today are once again beginning to use honey to treat complex burns, but the most terrifying problems were caused by filth and intestinal diseases. Dysentery killed armies much faster than enemy heavy cavalry. That's why the Romans built latrines outside the camp and conserved clean water. Anyone found contaminating a water source could be executed on the spot. Does your knee hurt from daily marches under heavy loads? No one cares about your well-being in this massive military machine. You'll limp, but you'll keep carrying your 40 kilograms. Over time, either the joint adapted or you became crippled. Natural selection in the legion worked ruthlessly and extremely effectively. The weak perished in the first 6 months from severe illnesses or exhaustion. The survivors turned into biological machines with incredible regenerative abilities. Their immune systems, hardened by the dirt, could handle any infection. You examine your hands, they're covered in rough scars and small cuts. Your fingers have grown so calloused that you can barely feel small objects. But this tough skin is your best natural shield against infections. Your body has built its own impenetrable defense against the hostile outside world. Pain in your body becomes your constant, silent companion through life. You spit on the ground, adjust your belt, and forget about your aches and pains. Another long day lies ahead, and there is absolutely no one here to complain to. The legion must press forward regardless of its soldiers' wounds. The final act of this morning's nightmare is the complete destruction of your camp. The Roman camp was a true masterpiece of engineering and security, and now, early in the morning, you must tear down all the fortifications to the ground. Why demolish this magnificent fortress after investing so much effort into it? Because the Romans never left ready-made, reliable fortifications for the enemy. If the camp is left intact, the barbarians will settle in it comfortably tomorrow. That is why the soldiers filled the ditches with earth and pulled out all the wooden stakes. It was hard labor that seemed utterly senseless to the recruits. You swing your shovel, filling in the trench you dug last night. Your muscles protest, your mind refuses to grasp the logic of this exhausting task. But in the Roman army, they didn't look for logic. Here, they simply followed orders. This process served as an excellent physical warm-up before the day's march. Modern psychologists would say that meaningless work kills people's motivation. But for the legionnaires, it was routine, part of a harsh contract with the state. In the evening, they build a safe haven. In the morning, they wipe it off the face of the earth. This taught the soldiers never to become attached to anything material. The wooden stakes were carefully gathered and tied to the soldiers' backpacks. Wood was a valuable resource, and each man carried 2 stakes for the next camp. They were sharpened on both ends for quick installation in any ground. This portable wall made the army independent of the local terrain. An hour later, all that remained of the mighty fortress was a bare, muddy field. Looking back, it was impossible to believe that an entire legion had spent the night here. The system worked flawlessly. The camp vanished as quickly as it had appeared. This struck the enemies with a superstitious, animalistic terror. The final blast of the brass trumpet sounds sharp and drawn out. It is the signal to begin the march, the main morning point of no return. You fall into tight formation, shoulder to shoulder with your comrades. Shields raised, spears resting on your shoulders, your gaze fixed straight ahead. The Legion's massive iron serpent begins to slowly crawl out onto the muddy road. The clatter of shod sandals merges into a single rhythm, making the ground tremble. Ahead of you lie 30 kilometers of dust, cold sweat, and familiar pain. And somewhere out there, at the very end of this path, a bloody battle awaits you. You don't know if you'll return alive to this frosty evening, but you know for certain that tonight you'll be digging the trench again. This absolute predictability of routine gave the soldiers a sense of confidence. In the chaos of a terrible war, only discipline mattered. Morning in the Roman camp has ended, and the legionnaires' hard day's work has begun. You take your first confident step, and the pain in your legs slowly recedes. The Roman machine has set in motion, and nothing can stop it. The survival of the empire once again rests on your shoulders, worn raw to the bone. The life of a Roman soldier was completely devoid of that beautiful cinematic romance. It was an exhausting, painful, and endlessly repetitive cycle of dirty work. Their main weapon was not a steel sword, but the ability to endure in silence. The army that still has the strength to stand on its feet by evening is the one that wins. Studying these ancient methods today, we are struck by their blatant cruelty. The Romans intuitively understood the laws of physiology millennia before their official discovery. They created a system of overloads that transformed ordinary farmers into indomitable titans. And this ruthless system functioned without the slightest glitch for centuries. The next time you find it hard to get up for work in the morning, think of the legionnaires. Think of the icy chainmail, the smell of old vinegar, and a 30-kilometer march with a heavy backpack. Your soft, warm bed will immediately seem like the greatest achievement of civilization, and the history of Rome will forever remain a monument to incredible human endurance.